The government shutdown meant state-funded highway projects were halted, another reminder to Minnesotans of the varying impacts of the standstill. Well, here to discuss the resurrection of those projects, we have the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, Joe Gimse. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Julie. I appreciate it.
Let's begin with the transportation bill. What is in this final bill that compares with the bill that came out of session?
Well, I think for the most part, the bill is very comparable to the conference committee report and the bill that we sent to the governor, which he eventually vetoed. And the major differences, I guess, in this new bill are just some negotiating on the general fund portion of it, which is a small part of the funding for transportation in this bill. So there were just some negotiations about the general fund portion of it.
So let's talk about the projects. Hundreds were halted. How quickly, what's the timeline here to get those resumed?
Well, I would imagine that as soon as we have the word that they can proceed, MnDOT has already made contingency plans. I've talked to Commissioner Sorrell, and they're ready to go as far as MnDOT is concerned, and our state employees, our contractors are more than ready to go. They say within 12 hours they'll have equipment rolling again and these projects back on course. So I would imagine that knowing contractors the way I do, that it'd be a relatively short time before they're going to be back to work.
Let's talk about some of the other impacts of this bill to Minnesotans. For example, will there be an increase in transit fares, bus fares?
Well, Met Council is discussing, and I believe has put out a proposal. They need to have 6 months of discussion about any potential fare increases, and they are in the process, that 6-month process of doing that at this time. But as far as our discussions in this budget, the fare increase was not a part of those discussions.
And it won't be in this final agreement either?
Right. There won't be any specific legislation dealing with fare increases.
Okay, so what are some of the key factors that you think Minnesotans should know?
Well, I think that just knowing that we have resolved it within the parameters, we've toed the line, if you will, on our general fund budget targets, and made transit work, made our roads and bridges work, and the transportation budget is $4.74 billion. It's a good-sized budget, a lot of money that goes towards our transportation needs, and you know, despite the fact that the transit makes such a small part of that, it's only $125 million, and that again is general fund spending. It really boiled down to making sure that we were able to provide adequate service to the people of Minnesota in our transit systems.
And do you believe that with this final bill you are providing adequate service?
I believe we are, and you know, the negotiated agreement that we had with the Met Council and with the other providers, I believe will make very good continuity of service for our people who use transit.
So Chair Gimse, about 3 weeks ago you held a news conference when it was prior to the shutdown, or just as the shutdown was impending, and
right.
You were talking about the fact that most of the funding for the transportation bill is dedicated funding, and there's so little general fund spending, and that's got kind of caught up in the politics of the matter. So what are you learning from this entire process that you can take with you into the future? And could there be changes? Well,
this has been quite a learning experience for me. You know, a first-time chair, given quite a responsibility for transportation for Minnesota. And you know, in that learning process, I learned that 98.6% of transportation funding is dedicated by our Constitution for infrastructure needs. You know, the Constitution goes on to say what percentages even will be used for state highways, for example, county state aid highways and municipal state aid streets. It's clearly laid out in the Constitution how that money will be spent. The roadblocks that we have seen, and you referred to the 3 weeks after session was over, we began the argument that this money should not be held up because the courts said that education funding could move forward in the absence of a K through 12 bill. We were making the argument that under the Constitution, where it says the state of Minnesota shall construct, maintain, and operate a highway system, that we should be permitted to also, as a core and essential service, move those dedicated dollars forward. I thought we had some very strong arguments when we went before the courts to make that case. But other things that I have learned is that maybe we don't want to tangle up these dedicated dollars in this overall budget discussion, and maybe there's an opportunity here to take a look at the general fund side of it as a separate component as we're going through the budgeting process. Create a bill, if you will, that is strictly the dedicated portion and separate out the general fund. Those are discussions that Representative Beard and I have had. We'll continue to explore them in the future.
Okay, we're just about out of time, but Chair Gimse, I do want to ask you, is the construction season, the road construction season, saved, in your opinion?
I guess I can't say that it is completely saved. Of course, we've lost about a month out of the middle of it, the best drying time, the best construction time of the season. But hopefully, maybe winter will come a little bit later and our contractors will be able to continue to work even longer. But knowing, again, contractors the way I do, they will make the most of the remaining time that they have, and we'll see a lot of improved roadways in the state of Minnesota.
So, Chair Gimse, where are we in relation to the different bridge projects right now, bridge repairs?
Well, I think we're right on track. You know, we have under Chapter 152, which was the previous transportation bill, we dedicated a lot of money towards our county bridges, our state bridges, the inspection of those bridges. I think we are proceeding right on track, if not ahead of track, to seeing a lot of improvements and repairs to those bridges. You know, and so now, you know, our attention is being turned to what we call Better Roads for a Better Minnesota project, which is pavement surface preservation. So we're going to be dedicating a lot of time to that and a lot of money to finding ways that we can improve our roadways here in Minnesota.
Okay, Senate Transportation Chair Joe Gimse, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie.